Hello, welcome back to our tutorial on the idea of motion. So for this one, we'll try to have a very simple approach to incorporate motion tracking in TouchDesigner without using other libraries or special camera. So we just use our video device in here, and then with a few command and with a new introduction of a command that probably a few of you may already know is the blob tracking. So we make use of the blob tracking and then to create an effect that normally we know as Slit-scan. So this is also one of the very useful catalogs of different types of Slit-scan video or camera work in media art. So we also make use of the texture 3D we have done a few weeks ago, and also with the combination of the time machine to achieve it. So the basic thing will be how we're going to create the input for the blob tracking. So blob tracking is a computer vision technique that you can use the library that normally we use the OpenCV here to scan and to identify color pixel which has some similarity and also proximity, and then to group them together as a block, which usually can be a moving part of the human body or an individual human being, so that depending on the camera that you place, whether in the ceiling or in the front. So let's get back to our exercise. So the first thing we are going to do is to take care of the performance. So in that case, we'll use an resolution to reduce the size of our camera input into a quarter, that is half the size. And then the next thing we're going to do is, other than the ultimate display of your video, the other tracking part we can do it by just with black and white image or grayscale image. So we can make use of monochrome to change it to pure black and white or grayscale, and at the same time we can further reduce the size of the frame by picking the 8-bit and mono. So in that case it's only one color channel rather than 4 of them, so it's 8-bit mono. So in order to identify the motion for tracking, so we need to have a strategy. So with this, the same as the last one we had just done, is we try to compare two frames, the current one and the previous one. So we again make use of the memory called cache, which keep the latest frame of the video image. So I can reduce the size of the drawers. I use the metaphor of drawers in a cabinet to describe how many frames you would like to maintain. And then we'll make use of the cache select by pushing this slider towards the left hand side with minor number. So for example, -6 will be like 6 frames before, so you can compare the two of them. Actually, the one on my right hand side will be a little bit slower than the one on the left hand side, which is the current frame. So with these two frames we are able to make the comparison by using the difference top to highlight which area we have motion, and then eventually that will go to the threshold, just the pure black and white image. And as I mentioned in the last exercise, we also may want to adjust the threshold in order to have more detail detection, and in considering the type of motion in front of the camera, whether it's fast moving one or slow one. Okay, the next important thing will be the blob track top. So because we are using, so I am using the non-commercial version, so the maximum number of blocks will be limited to 2, but in my case I just picked one of them for my demonstration. And with this one, actually you can see the response from here, that you can see I can change, for example, like the bound, that's the square that you have, which is in red color, which kind of identify the major moving part of the screen that we of the image that we have. And you might also consider to see whether you would like to keep the minimum block size a little bit bigger, for example, in order to delete some noise that may caused by the noise in the background, and also the maximum block size that you would like to capture a big movement in front of your camera. So those are some of the customization that you can also further do more customization if you want to. So let's stick with this one first. Okay, so we now can understand where the motion is. So the motion actually happen with the white area because they are the difference between the two frames in terms of the pixel color. And then the blob track actually can identify those major area by drawing a square over those areas. So there's another missing thing, that how actually we can locate the position information of the square and also the size of the square that indicate where the major movement is. But before that, I can also explain a little bit. There's another input to the blob track that which can be useful. So for this one is using frame by frame comparison to identify the moving area or the block area. So block area in this case is the group of white pixels kind of connected together. And to improve the performance of the tracking, that you can also give it a stationary background. So in last tutorial we mentioned if you have a stationary background, that you can compare the background with your current image such that any change can be detected as something present in front of the camera against the background. So in that situation, which also apply here, that we can actually provide a background of pure black color, and I can also change it to the same dimension, 640 by 360, and then use it as a background to connect here, because normally without any movement there will be a pure black. With movement there will be some white area. So that can help to improve the performance of the blob tracking algorithm. And then the difficult part, or the key core part of this area, is how to locate the square in the blob tracking result. So the answer is pretty straightforward. You can use chop or that. So use chop in this case with an info, and then you can just drag this one to here, and then when you move, actually you can identify there will be more channel coming from here with something like block 0, block 1 colon something. So we can just select the block 0, that's the major block, and identify to have a look, and then we can select, for example, so let make sure I have movement, and then the U, and then the V, which correspond to the location of the first block, and I can rename it to TX and TY, and it should represent the location of the movement. For example, if I wave my left hand, the number of TX actually is 0.0 something. If I wave my right hand, so the number of TX is 0.7 and 0.8 something, which actually corresponding to where I am moving with my hands. And the other thing that you may want to improve upon is if there's no movement in front of the camera, there's nothing here. So sometimes you don't want to have this situation. To correct this one, we are able to use something called feedback in chop that you can connect here. So whenever there's signal sending from here, it will keep the last one. So it will be good that, for example, if you have a graphics following your hand movement, the graphic will not suddenly disappear, but just stay there if you do not move. And there's another one that we can put it into the second input, which is optional. It's if you don't put it, so it will have no signal in the very beginning, but once you have movement, that will store your last signal. And but if you want to keep it very, very clean, that even though when you switch on your TouchDesigner project, but without anyone moving in front of the camera, you still want to keep one of the default signal, that you can put a constant here, which give it the same name, TX and TY, and then connect it here, so it will keep the TX/TY when there's no signal coming from here in the very beginning of the time. So the number you need to figure out whether 00, that is the bottom left corner, will be the best one. But sometimes for this kind of application, I would just keep it in the middle of the screen, that is 0.5 and 0.5. Okay, so with this one, so we'll be able to connect it to some form of graphics. So I will create a graphics in 2D, just a rectangle of the same screen size, but not just a rectangle, but it's a vertical line. I keep it pretty narrow, and then I'm going to use the transform to make the movement. And if you remember, the translate over here will be like minus 0.5 to positive 0.5, but the number over here we have just seen is 0 to 1. So in that case, we might want to have one mesh to do the mapping from 0 to 1 to minus 0.5 to positive 0.5, and this one will be the position. Okay, so now we are ready to put the position here by just export chops. So I work on with the TX first, but I probably for this example I won't bother the TY at the moment. So if you move your hand left and right, so you're going to see this one moving. And if you would like to combine two of them, then it can be pretty straightforward with the composite that we use in every exercise. So that one is the original video. That one is under. So now you have something like this one. So when you move your hand, so actually the vertical bar more or less follow. And even though if you are using another object for the navigation. Okay, so you may find that the movement of this one is not very smooth because of the identification of the block from here is a little bit quite sudden. So in order to make it smooth, so in chop that we can use something called a filter, which try to streamline the movement by using the Gaussian blur, which is similar to the blur signal that you use in filter in 2D or in Photoshop. So now you have this. So it will also follow your head movement other than the hand. So that is the fun of this one. And if you want to, you can also make feedback in your motion such that you can see something like this rather than pure straight line. You have this kind of motion blur in your tracking. Yes, so that is something that you can play around with a lot of fun. So for those who would like to enhance that, you can also add the Y dimension. So sometimes I may just use the left because the demonstration in front of the camera with I'm sitting here, so the horizontal movement seems to be a little bit more natural in a sense. So the other thing that you can also play around with this is by quantizing the motion to make it a little bit more like digital rather than very smooth movement. So if you want to, you can add something called limit. And in limit, there's the second tab called quantize is actually instead of the very smooth color value and also position value, you can also make it like region by region in a sense. So in that case, I can choose, for example, both of them like 0.02. So the value for that one you can experiment whether the bigger one or the smaller one will suit your purpose. So in that case, you're going to see something like this. So rather than completely smooth movement, you will have this one bar by one bar movement. So the reason of doing this one, because I have another idea. So rather than just playing with this vertical line following my hands movement, so I'm thinking of like what I said in the very beginning, the Slit-scan effect by using texture 3D and time machine, which is a very common effect in media art. Okay, to work on with this one, I also need to add the texture 3D we did a few weeks ago. If you remember that we have the loop the film loop that I use the texture 3D to render the texture in different frame of the loop. So this one comes with 32 frame at the cache size. So, and then I will send it to a time machine. So time machine is a very useful in a sense that you can create quite a lot of effect out of this one. So the time machine for this one is a little bit similar to the catch and cache select, but instead of just returning frame number 1 or the frame before this one or before that one, you can actually mix the frame by using the second input, which is another top of different grayscale color. So that is the fun of playing with this one. So in that case, because we have like 32, so I just keep 32 as the black signal, and then 0 will be the white signal. And then for this one, instead of sending out this to the composite, I make it with black one to make it pure black and white with grayscale. So I compose it with the transform command to put it on top of black one. So now you have this white and gray bar following my hand movement. Okay, and this one I put it here is a little bit more tidy as a second input to the time machine. So the idea of this one is the location of the white area actually will be the latest frame. The location of the black area will be the oldest frame, and somewhere in between with the grayscale will be the frames in between the current one and the oldest one, which is 32 frames before. So I connect it this one, and then you're going to see my funny face. Okay, I connect this one to here. So now everything is done with motion tracking and also slit-scan photography. Okay, so whenever my hand moves, actually the area comes with a little bit more white and the frame will be more current. So when I'm talking, actually there's a delay because it's 32 frames before this dark area. But when the movement is in front of my face, so that will be the current frames, and then the other area will be like the oldest one. So that history of the frame is kind of compressing into one single frame here, but with different region come from different point in time. So you are going to see this kind of slit-scan effect that you can find in quite a lot of those motion graphic effects. Okay, so for those who are into this effect, you can also check out the catalog that I'm going to post it in the page on that in different points of time in the history of photography or media art. So there are different artists. I think this one is a very cool one that I often use in class to describe this slit-scan photography. Okay, so that is the implementation of this simple motion tracking. So the motion tracking actually can be done with more sophistication, that you can have the block ID over here, which indicate that the area that move along the screen, and then when it's disappeared and a new block ID will come over, that you can actually track the movement of the people or some moving object in front of the camera. Okay, so that's it for today. Until the next one, stay tuned with more updates in the channel. I think the next one I'm going to do be a little bit more on optical flow and how we can have more fun with using the optical flow palette in TouchDesigner that can integrate quite a lot of other commonly used motion graphic effects with the optical flow in interaction design of media art. Okay, stay tuned. Bye bye.